There's a forgotten science to controlling your thoughts, which is only really recalled inside of Christian circles, and doesn't appear to be that present in any others. There is a concept of the self-control of mind, and within Eastern circles it's called Nepsis, or watchfulness, or, perhaps more accurately, soberness. The idea behind it is that if you notice a thought which is potentially against the natural law, you have to actively fight it. That could be any kind of thought, and obviously the responses to the thought depends on what kind of thought it is. It could be anger, it could be lust, it could be hatred, it could be anything that goes against this natural law. Now, many of us are bombarded with these thoughts, and certainly the saints were, and that's why they created this concept, because they were fighting against these thoughts intensely and constantly throughout their entire lives, as we all do. You see, the reason why it's called soberness is that you can get drunk on a particular passion. You can lose soberness through it. I know for most men they'll know what it's like to lose themselves in lust, or to lose themselves in anger, and how utterly it clouds the mind, how it makes thoughts a lot harder to generate. In fact, there is something that says from St. Aquinas that lust dulls the intellect, in that how the lust is so smothering on our minds that we lose track of our thoughts, and we lose our ability to react very quickly. Now, one thing I can be absolutely certain of in my own life, and I'm sure many of you can be as well, is that in the midst of this kind of drunkenness on lust or drunkenness on anger, you've all done things that you regret, things that you're undoubtedly culpable for, but things that you ultimately regret. You may have said something horrible to a person, or done something horrible to a person, or even hurt yourself. Now, what society has forgotten in its forgetting of the free will of man is that we can look within ourselves, and we can resist and even quiet these kinds of urges towards these forms of drunkenness. Now, after all of this, I'm sure you're wondering, well, how do I quiet these thoughts? How do I get control over them? Well, I'm glad you asked, because there are a bunch of ways that you can do it, and probably the easiest one to do is to avoid the occasion to such things. For example, if you know that you're going to go to a particular bar where the women are scantily clad, and you want to avoid that lust, then don't go to the bar. If you want to go to a place where you don't want to get drunk, make sure they don't stock up on alcohol. If you want to avoid anger, then avoid annoying people. And that's probably one of the easiest things you can do, but in case that isn't possible, there's always prayer. I personally have found that one of the most effective things you can do is learn how to mentally pray. Now, how do you go about mentally praying on something, say lust, or on anger? How do you gain control through mental prayer? Well, first of all, as I described on my video, Learning to Learn from the Saints, you get a piece of scripture or sayings on a particular subject. Let's say, for example, something on lust. And you repeat it to yourself audibly 4 times. Then, you sit and you meditate on it, and think about what you can get out of the saying. And eventually this will lead you into the third section, which is prayer. Because as you realise certain things, you'll be drawn up close to God, and be changed internally by the experience, in such a way as to strengthen you against that particular appetite. For example, I was once meditating on the controlling of my lust, and I realised that in the midst of this, that each woman, by virtue of being human, is deeper than the entire world, this being regardless of their exterior appearance. Every single rational soul is very deep, and this includes those women who we may think of as stupid or alluring. This includes thoughts. But therefore, in order to think of women in such a way, reduces them and is disrespectful towards them because they're much deeper than that. Now, obviously, you can realise this intellectually, but it's something far different to experience this in prayer. I also realised how much of a problem this could cause me. The problem I realised for myself is that by focusing on this caricature, I was reducing a woman. I was missing out on red flags, which is obviously a really horrific thing. If I evaluate a woman to be really good when she's really a complete psycho, then that could stitch me up massively long term. But even worse, I could evaluate a woman to be horrible when really she's deeply at the bottom of her heart trying to be a great woman, and she's really a humble and beautiful person within herself. Someone I'd want to spend my time with because of these virtues. Now imagine how many men in the world, in the blindness of their lust, have dismissed a woman who would make an excellent wife and a great lover for life. And imagine how many men have been with whores when they've thought that they are truly great women. And this can be applied to almost everything. This can be applied to eating, this can be applied to anger, this can be applied to directly acquiring virtues like humility or prudence. If we read little sayings and meditate on them in our times of troubles, then we can help ourselves get stronger in this regard, and therefore grow as people. So I hope that little example I gave you right there was useful, and I'd like to thank you all for watching. Goodbye. A very big thank you to those on the list here. These are subscribers to the Renaissance Man program who get audiobooks and controversial videos every week for $5 a month. There's already quite a lot of content there, so if you check it out in the description, you won't be missing out. Thank you.